Welcome to Engaging ESG, the podcast that considers what it takes to get ESG communications right and how it can go oh so wrong. It's season 2 and we're back for more. Once again, we're looking at real-life examples of ESG messaging, some that will inspire and some that may make you cringe. I'm Jennifer Owens, Director of Marketing at Flow Carbon.
And I'm Katie Callens, Lead for Sustainability at Adobe. In this 11-part series, we're delving into the complexity of ESG comms, industry by industry. We'll highlight lessons learned and share practical tips you and your team can use today as you navigate the evolving landscape of environmental, social, and governance topics. Let's get started.
Oh my God. Hello, Katie. How are you doing? What are you doing? It's a spring weather outside, but it's 42 in New York. How's it by you?
It is pretty rainy, pretty cold, and I feel a little sad about it. We've had a lot of rain this winter, but then I think about the salmon and how they're just jazzed about the water. So, I can put up with a couple more gloomy days.
No, I just sit here and think about the salmon. That's what
Isn't that what everyone thinks about when they're a little depressed about the rain?
Sure.
I think if you've been raised in California and around drought and been in environmental work as long as I have, you're like, okay, now the salmon will be able to go upstream.
Think about the salmon.
I can put on my rain boots.
I do see my bulbs. Last year, I went to a tulip farm and bought bulbs, and they're starting to sprout. So I do think about the rain in terms of my tulips. So I can't wait to see what they look like. It's like a science experiment right in front of you. Like life is happening right here.
Totally. I have also been really enjoying my houseplants, partially because I was traveling for work a lot recently. And there's just something really special about that feeling of coming home. Like the space knows you. And I like to think my plants are even a little perkier when they get to see and hear me singing around the house.
Oh, well, they do. They do enjoy the singing. I mean, I like, and when you see your home and you think it's night, like when it's windy and awful and cold outside as it's been for parts of March, you appreciate how strong it is that there's this infrastructure that takes care of you and is surrounding you. And that's the topic of today is the built environment. So, let's lay some foundation down for our listeners.
Exactly. We are not holding back on the puns, just a different topic of puns today.
Is there a brick and mortar pun I could do right now? I don't know.
Exactly. That we've got some sturdy building blocks for today's discussion. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about how our built environment, our homes, our schools, our offices, our hospitals, our work are being designed and constructed with sustainability in mind. And I kind of like to start the conversation thinking about our home, which is a place that hopefully has some of your favorite people, animals, plants, and maybe even some tasty treats and some custom art.
Oh, yes.
But the unfortunate thing about home is that sometimes you have to leave, especially in the rain. And you're going out into different spaces for doctor's appointments, life, work, into the broader built environment. And these places are not always as comfortable as your homes. We don't really get to curate them to our own preferences. Doctor's
offices. I mean, who picks the chairs that are in the waiting room or the table that you have to sit in? I have thoughts about why. Lighting. Yes. Why are these examining rooms? They're all anyways. They're not built for us to inhabit, let alone. Who even knows, I don't, about the sustainability and the environmental concerns about any of these spaces? I mean, we are animals. We were outdoor creatures before we became indoor cats.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that all my family, we were all peasants. We're all out there doing farming. And I'm sure we all moved inside to the factories.
Yes.
I worked in South Carolina, my first job, and those factories were the source of brown lung. They were textile factories. They did not have any concern to air quality, to the water quality. And now there's a quality to the idea of sitting sedentary at our desks and our computers, our typewriters, our whatnot. I have an Aura ring and it harangues me every single day about how many hours I have sat in front of my computer. It doesn't know why I'm sitting, but it knows that I'm sitting.
Yes, no, exactly. I think everyone listening to this can agree that we are living mostly an indoor life. And I think not only from an activity perspective, but also from a sustainability and health perspective, there's a lot to consider. A common stat that you'll hear in the green building world is 90% of our time we spend indoors, with likely another 5%, commuting in cars.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did a little research on this because I had heard that stat a lot.
Yeah,
and I was
like one of those that everybody just assumes.
And it turns out it was an EPA study in 2001. So over 20 years old. But honestly, I think it's probably still true, if not even higher these days after the pandemic.
Yep. Like especially on the days I work from home, there are days I don't leave the apartment. So it's 100%.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And I think one of the reasons that is cited a lot as a statistic is it's a good reminder that we need to think about the buildings and how we construct them, but also what is the experience for occupants inside? What are the products and materials and interior spaces, and how are we making them healthy?
Right.
Of course, there are structural and societal factors keeping us indoors, but one thing that I've been thinking a lot about as we move into summer here is potentially wildfire season, which in California hasn't been too bad, but it means that when it is bad here, the outside doesn't necessarily equal good air quality. And when we think about indoor air quality as a health impact, where is that coming from? What are the products that you're bringing inside your building? Are they off-gassing chemicals?
Yep.
If you have a gas stove, how is that impacting indoor air quality? And also, what is the air filtration system? But okay, I'm getting ahead of myself.
I mean, for sure, because it's like, what state isn't climate impacted right now with these things? I mean, for those of us in New York City, there was the freaky day where we heard it might be happening. And then when it did, when our skies turned burnt orange from the wildfires in Canada. So it doesn't even have to be in our state or our city to be impacting. So, I mean, I don't want to slide us down the hill into full-on depression. So maybe since it's not a wildfire day, we take a deep breath.
Yes, definitely. It's really easy to get worked up about these topics. I'd even say I'm winded. But I think part of the reason I am looking forward to this topic today is that sustainability and ESG as it applies to the built environment was really how I got into this work. It was my focus in a different lifetime. I had the fortune of helping to build Google's green building program for its global offices. And it was my first job in corporate sustainability. So it really got me hooked on this system of change of trying to think about how does the private sector influence for good, and how can we use brands and the market for the climate crisis.
Ooh, it's always the first one that gets you, and then you can never leave. But I do love talking about our previous lives because I like, I do believe that life is accumulative. So all these experiences we have adds to the current experience we're now having. So I'm going to call the built environment your gateway drug to sustainability and ESG. So that's what we're going to call it. Built environment, gateway drug. Okay, so I'm going to do, that's my going back in time, and it gets all squiggly, in front. And
exactly.
I see young professional Katie falling hard for a particular big rainbow search engine. And so tell me, were you wearing a fleece zip-up vest? That seems to be like the tech uniform.
Oh, yes. No, I did fall hard for that big rainbow search engine, but there was no fleece vest. I was coming from the EPA. And so I was actually like the nerd in an Ann Taylor loft blazer, just like coming in like young professional. But I was like, really like, they care about what's in my brain, but also like, how fly does this blazer look?
It was a navy blue. DC
it was navy. I also had gray. You have to have your summer grays.
Oh, I was a reporter in DC. I had all this uniform too. Yes.
Yeah, it was funny. It literally seemed like everyone shopped at Dan Taylor. I was like, okay, what is the controversy? Oh, wait, there's one shop. Got it. Yeah. That's what's happening. But no, pretty much after my interview, if I ever went to work and was wearing anything beyond kind of a hoodie, people would tease me incessantly about, was I going on a date? Did I have someone fancy to see? So I learned pretty quickly, like, okay, not all the time for the blazer game. But, pretty quickly I was guzzling that tech company Kool-Aid, and I was taking off the blazer, but I was picking up the phone. And I was calling carpet manufacturers, asking them about their chemical components on the regular. That was like the first thing I did in my job.
Wait, and what was your title?
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a funny way to get into the field. But so let me back up a bit. When I joined Google, they were still building out their green real estate program, and it was focused on sustainable design and construction. And in particular, they were building the capacity for their brand new healthy materials program. And since I had just come from the EPA, they were like, oh, okay, she has a little expertise in human health and the environment. And she's really into this nerdy blazer. So perhaps she is the perfect person to help us build a database of building materials for architects and general contractors to utilize on building products to kind of help take our green building program to the next level.
So healthy materials. So we're talking Willy Wonka land, like we're eating like what they eat, like the furniture and the TV and all that sort of stuff.
No, unfortunately, it was not a ruse for a secret chocolate shop. But when we say healthy and when the program was discussed, it was talking more about actually the indoor environment. So healthy as in the powder coatings of that office chair are made of non-toxic materials that won't off-gas pollutants into your office, thereby improving air quality.
That wonderful smell of like new paint, that you loved as a kid.
We want none of that. We want you to not be huffing any paint or any chairs. That was the opposite. Opposite of this, and no glue while you're at it.
You're no fun.
Okay, so why was this important? I mean, clearly the fun police maybe should have been another name for this program. But this concept of improving air quality, they found was really vital for occupant experience and productivity. And in particular, so my boss, Mary Davidge, who's still a close friend, we run a little climate book club, which is sweet, gave me a copy of the book Cradle to Cradle right when I joined, which was a book by pioneer architect and designer Bill McDonough. And it was focused on material science and how we can be designing and using products in buildings with health and the environment in mind, as well as sustainable disposal and reuse from cradle to grave. That's kind of what the book was getting at.
And yet he didn't call it cradle to grave. That's it.
No, cradle to cradle to try to have it be a full circular loop there.
Well, now I can claim that I did date a material science engineer in college. So, I'm very well acquainted. It was a fascinating field, getting to go to the lab. And it was like the beginning of Kevlar and all. It was really cool. But much like we've talked about certain sectors where it's everywhere, like shipping touching 90% of everything that comes through your door and all that, those high numbers. Materials are truly everywhere all at once. And to think of it cradle to cradle, is that circularity? Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah, exactly. I think one way to think about the concept of cradle to cradle was like early branding for circularity. And people who are familiar with the concept of life cycle assessment will also note that this sounds familiar because it gets back to this idea that we are thinking about a product's full inputs, uses, and end of life before we make it or buy it. And LCAs have now become really table stakes for material component inputs or measuring carbon emissions. But this was some of those early conversations.
And so there you are calling carpet manufacturers to find out all this stuff? Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Let's go back to using phones in the office that are literally like a desktop phone.
That anymore?
I mean, I sent a fax this week, but that's another podcast. I know.
It's been the 90s are back, man.
It's been a weird week. But yes. Okay. So When I think about this work, in retrospect, this was maybe not the most efficient way to run the program. But as anyone knows who's starting something out for the first time, where you don't have very much data to pull from, you kind of just have to figure out a spot to start and start from there. And so let me take you back, Jen, to a simpler time, 2012. It's the second Obama presidency. London is hosting the Olympics.
I'm leading working mother and fighting for a federal mandate for paid parental leave. Spoiler alert, still don't have one. And I am judging companies on how they treat their workforce through benefits and policies, flexible work, childcare, pay transparency. Not even occurred to us to judge them on the health of the built environment that was holding all those workers.
Right. As I said, simpler time. In some ways.
Quality, affordable childcare. So simple.
So simple. But yes, so we hadn't met yet, but in 2012, the way to think about, I think, the green building world is we were at a point where the most widely recognized and reputable green building standard in the US was, and still is, LEED, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Efficient Design. So being LEED certified was a badge of honor, showing that your building, whether that was an interior design project, new construction project, what have you, if it met criteria for LEED in different categories, and those categories were efficient fixtures, for example, like how many LED lights or low flow toilets. Another category was recycled or sustainable products like recycled carpet tile, forest certified wood. There was another category that was about how building features promoted sustainable activities for occupants, like were you giving them opportunities to plug into an EV charger? Did you give them a bike rack? Do they have accessible space? So anyway, there was all these different characteristics. And so LEED basically gave projects a scorecard. And the more points you got, the higher the rating. And so LEED Gold certified was the target for all Google buildings, which was pretty common amongst our peers. And quite frankly, it was not perfect, as no frameworks really are. But it was really great for standardizing a still growing field and showing all these different design and construction teams, like the direction of travel, like what are we trying to build?
Well, and getting them, it's such great branding in the sense that they all compete for it. You can make every framework, but if people don't buy in to attempt to achieve it, then it's like a tree falls in the woods. If you're not there, did it make a sound? No.
Yeah, especially if the tree doesn't have a good marketing campaign. How's it going to get out there?
And if it's not LEED certified, I mean, who cares?
Well, and it was from a marketing and ESG perspective, it was a good strategy, right? Because you actually got a physical plaque that was put on the building as
and
well as
it as a rando person walking into a building. You'd be like, oh, it's LEED certified.
LEED certified. Yeah. So there's something to say with that, like not often in our communications world are we talking about physical things, but it was and is, I think, a good strategy for communications.
Yeah.
So we were working in this world of LEED. All of that was kind of moving along in a relatively straightforward way. But in 2012, the rating system had not yet figured out was this question of health and assessments and how we were going to what we were bringing into the indoor environment and how that was impacting indoor air quality, or IAQ.
Interesting.
And so in particular, there was a lot of studies linking IAQ to improved brain function and mood. And of course, that was particular interest for companies hiring, who they regarded the best and brightest to build the future of tech. Oh, and it didn't hurt that Google co-founder Larry Page was particularly interested in this topic. Never hurts to have a lead exec at the top bought in.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in my 2012 days, it was Susan Wojcicki at YouTube at the time. She was taking up the cause for parental leave and flexible work. So you could point to someone running a successful company and say, see, she thinks it's important too. It's not just us like low-hanging folks in the world of workplace flexibility. It's a person actually making money for a massive tech company. So yes, it's, I got to think it was a great thing for sustainability to have Larry Page say, I care. So
completely. And in particular, IAQ as the driver for the next generation of this field, because tech loves data.
Sure.
And it was only early in my time at Google that we started partnering with this really cool organization called Acclima, an air quality monitoring startup that they still work with today. I think right now they have it like attached to Google Maps cars and they do air quality monitoring in cities, which is pretty interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
But we kind of beta tested that in our offices to see which sites had the best indoor air quality. And our hypothesis was that vetting products through our healthy materials program would produce healthy workplaces, better outcome for employees, as well as downstream implications for workers and the environment. Yeah. So that was the hypothesis, and we were kind of getting paid to test it, which in retrospect is pretty cool.
Very cool.
And we didn't have much of a playbook, but we started just building a database of Google approved healthy materials. And that was by taking products that architects and general contractors had specified on projects and vetting them according to the EPA's red list of chemicals and a few other criteria.
Wow.
And so we had been given this role by the Google real estate team, but these architects and general contractors were a little confused. And so there was a lot of kind of socializing with them that you can't just go buy a thing. We need to vet it first.
Oh, yeah.
And in particular, like the contacts at these product companies weren't necessarily talking to the material scientists directly, but they were talking to the sales folks. And so when I called the sales folks, they would love to tell you that, of course, our products are healthy. Of course, because they're trying to make a sale.
Yeah.
But we learned pretty quickly that they didn't know if BPA was in their product or antimicrobial coatings. And so we'd basically have to route to the technical expert to understand the details of what we were asking, who had the authority to verify the data on behalf of the product and on behalf of the company.
Wow.
And then put it into the system and tell the architect, like, thumbs up, you can continue.
Or thumbs down, find another way.
Right. They really loved hearing from us about that.
I am sure.
They were like, according to what system? So yeah, it was a really interesting kind of first job in corporate sustainability because it was monotonous. It was grunt work. I think people earlier in their career can feel a little jaded by wanting to do big work, but I think it can be good to see the value of entry-level work again and asking the same questions over and over again about chemicals and product ingredients. But the
like
good news is that
Order episode, when they always have to make the 8 million calls to find
completely.
You are my Law and Order episode for sustainability.
Yeah. And so we started to build an approved database for US products. We expanded globally. And what was cool was that while we were doing this vetting process just for Google projects, we saw that industry standards started catching up too. There were more disclosures that were being created for environmental aspects of products, including health criteria. When I started, there was a concept called an environmental product declaration. And then a couple of years into the work, there became a health product declaration. And then we also found companies began proactively sharing their product details with us so that companies like Google and increasingly others who were looking into this criteria could readily find their information rather than us calling them one by one.
Right. It's wonderful that you start to share. That's always been kind of a mantra for the tech industry, is to share. That was always something great about Meta. It's like, we're going to do these open sourced approaches. So that's great. And then, of course, then it starts to be a flywheel for these products to say, hey, like this big forward thinking company like Google is using our product because they've deemed it safe. You want to keep going, and it adds the value. And, this is the power of marketing right here, and to create a whole new demand lever for them. I love it. And so you're doing old school reporting, you're finding out all this stuff, and then, it was all good and you never got pushback ever. Love it.
Exactly. Everyone was super on board. No, I mean, I think it helped that we were like a bright, flashy company and client that people wanted to work with. So there was some incentive there. But a lot of my job at the beginning was socialization, just helping people understand what Google's green building criteria was. And for design teams, understanding that if they cited products not on the healthy materials list, it would be really challenging for us to work with them in the future. But I will say some of the funniest responses we got were from manufacturers who didn't think we were real.
Really? How so?
Yeah. So we had a couple manufacturers just straight up hang up on us because they didn't think that Google, a search engine, AKA the internet, was calling them. They thought it was a prank.
So you're not breaking the internet. In this case, the internet is actually calling.
Right. Right. Like your refrigerator is running, one of those pranks. And we learned a lot. Like I remember that we had to block out August because we couldn't call any of the tile suppliers in Italy because they would all be on vacation.
Love that.
And they were also very surprised to be hearing from us on a random Tuesday. But thank you, Jen, for going with me on this long road down memory lane. But I think it's sufficient to say as the challenges of designing and constructing sustainable and healthy businesses was really my first experience with what we now call ESG. And it was an incredible, eye-opening experience to see the challenges of doing the right thing within such a complex and multifaceted supply chain. And at Google and many of the tech offices you'll see in Silicon Valley, kind of one of the most sustainable practices they did was to be, quote, hermit crabs. So they would go into kind of redesigning the interiors of these buildings, but keep the exterior shell, the exterior envelope of the previous tenants. And sometimes we'd see Google and Facebook campuses of today actually look quite a lot like the old tech campuses of the former giants of folks who used to be there, like Sun Microsystems. And, there's always that eerie but good reminder that tech companies tout that we keep some of these reminders of our previous tenants because it reminds us to innovate or perish.
Yeah, we're all slightly gagging here because isn't that the sign to Meta? The other side of it is Sun Microsystems. Like they kept the other side of the sign specifically for that. Yeah, great.
They did, yeah. So we could go into all the navel gazing mantras we don't agree with. But to bring us back onto this topic, I think what was helpful for me about my experience at Google was that it made me realize that seeking a career in not just sustainable buildings, but at the corporate strategy level was what I was being drawn to. And many years later, I am working more at the corporate strategy level and still have really great friends in the green building space. And it's been cool to see because the early healthy materials program that I helped create was kind of highlighted on a recently opened project that Google announced in, I think, 2022. And it's called Bayview. And it's one of the most beautiful, sustainable, and quite frankly, fantastical office buildings I've ever experienced.
Ooh, you don't usually say that about office buildings. How is it fantastical?
One word, dragon scale.
What?
Yes, dragon scale. I mean, talk about marketing, right?
Yeah.
So that is the name of the super futuristic rooftop photovoltaic panels that they designed and put onto the building that basically move in alignment with the sun. So they have a solar skin. It's the first of its kind that's made up of 90,000 silver solar panels and have the capacity to generate nearly 7 megawatts of energy on the building. Yeah, which is great for trying to get them on track with their carbon-free energy goal by 2030.
Oh, that's cool. And I do love a 2030 goal as opposed to these, in 2090, we'll consider, so that's fantastic. That is fantastical.
Yeah, it's a really amazing building. It was definitely not a hermit crab. It was a full ground up development project. But as part of it, the Healthy Materials program vetted thousands of building products and materials to ensure that there was the least amount of toxins possible. Everything from carpet tiles, paints, piping, plywood. And they're now being evaluated using the Living Building Challenge Red List as a framework. Shout out to Living Building Challenge, which is a best-in-class regenerative building framework that honestly goes above and beyond LEED.
Wow.
But that really has developed a bit more since when I first started. And then there's other really cool features of the project. I don't want to talk about Google for the whole time, but on the project, they created a wetland to support native bird life and plants, as well as water retention ponds to collect gray water for reuse. And they also have an on-site geothermal system to help with heating and cooling. And that's really reduced the amount of water that's used, usually in these types of building, by about 90% or 5 million gallons annually.
Oh, well, that does sound cool. I really do want to go see the dragon scales. That seems cool. So the next time I'm on the West Coast, we're gonna do a Engaging ESG field trip.
Oh,
So.
yes, I love that.
So this reminds me of the pilot that the team did at the Facebook data centers, and they used mushrooms to help break down drywall that can't be recycled.
Mm.
I worked with the wonderful Janelle Shapiro to tell this story. So I have all these stats like at my fingertips of like it's 660 million tons of construction and demolition waste are created just by gypsum drywall, which then reacts chemically with other stuff that it comes in contact with in landfills. And so Meta did this thing with the mycocil? Don't even.
Mycocil, yeah, I think that's right.
To create a pilot project where it would use mushrooms that would turn the gypsum drywall to break it down to reuse in insulation or acoustic tiles. So it's like a whole other part of the built environment is the actual building of the environment.
So cool.
It's awesome.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's so important.
And that team, they were always doing like the coolest, Miranda Gardner doing all the like cool pilots. And the idea being that when you do a pilot, it has to be thought of at the early stages of how you can scale this into something. If you can do something with drywall, but it can't be used by anyone else, it's what a great experiment, but it's not really helpful. So these projects were really cool of what they're doing in the world of construction.
Yeah. And I love the idea that these tech companies maybe have a little bit more money to spend on these built environments that not every organization has. But if we can take those learnings, if we can take that information and apply it to broader changes in the industry, that can be huge. And that actually, I think, leads nicely into a little shout out that I'll give to my current employer, Adobe, at our new headquarters building in San Jose, Founders Tower. It opened last year, and it's the largest all-electric building of its scale in Silicon Valley, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
And in particular, I think there were some great features about it with they have a high performance envelope that reduces glare and maximizes daylight, which helps energy use reduction by 40%. And then, of course, lots of natural light and daylighting, as well as some natural design patterns, biophilia in the space. But I think in particular, there's a piece around the building where they were building out spaces that were electric that haven't really been done before. And so those learnings are infusing the design projects of future clients with those architects, but also it's being really shared as kind of like a show and tell example of how to avoid certain pitfalls.
Oh, that's cool. You were doing tours of this during Verge, right?
Yes. Yeah. Last fall, we toured the space, and one of the most memorable parts of that tour was the all electric kitchen, which is the largest in the country. And in particular, there was one stop at the pizza tasting and chat with the chefs that was very popular.
It's an electric pizza oven? Like
exactly.
Huge? Oh,
yeah.
I like
so it's
that.
electric. It's electric pizza oven. And I think what really impressed me about the space and also talking with the chefs was that food is the great connector. We all hopefully enjoy 3 meals a day if we're lucky enough to have them. And so what I learned kind of putting on this event and talking with the designers was that actually they had to put a lot of faith in some of the electric equipment that hadn't been developed yet while they were citing it for the design. So there was a lot of kind of Adobe having to be the first to purchase these materials before they were widely available. Yeah. So I think that's another important way that companies can kind of invest in this next generation of buildings.
Yeah. Creating the market for it, right?
Exactly. Showing that there's demand. Yeah. And I think the other piece that really stuck with me was this kind of human component that I hadn't thought about with electric kitchen design. So I think if people have been following any of the debate around electric versus natural gas stoves, you'll see that there has been some information shared that, high-end chefs are not interested in this, gas. A lot of that is coming from the natural gas industry. We're not surprised.
Right.
To hear. But in particular, these were some very high-end chefs that said that there was a learning curve for sure, like, electric pizza oven versus fire. But he said pretty quickly they were able to get trained up on the tool. And even more importantly, there was a great benefit to the health and safety of his workers because they weren't exposed to variable heat. And more importantly, they weren't exposed to open flame.
Do you know how many burns I've gotten on my hands from my gas stove? Yes.
Yeah. It's like just a basic thing if you're thinking about human health. And then I think the other thing from a kind of communications and marketing perspective that's pretty interesting is there were a lot of employees who were now asking questions about this all electric kitchen, trying to understand the look and feel. And in California, and I know other parts of the country and world, quite frankly, we're trying to move towards more of an all electric housing stock and also in commercial buildings to transition away from gas. And it was interesting to see Founders Tower as kind of this great proof point for employees to see like how it works. Yeah. And the culinary team even hosted a cute lunch and learn about kind of, so you want to transition to electric. And I just thought that was really great because one of the things that we don't talk about, I think, a lot around technology transformations is the education, is the training. And so how do we bring people along?
Well, which is what like the World's Fair GE would do, like Home of the Future, specifically to do these things in like the 50s. So it's just never ending. We can get better at all this stuff. I guess that's the lesson we learn. And then all of this reminds me of in building, in going outside, is that huge green roof that Meta had that was home to like 40,000 dozens of migrant birds and bugs and plants and the like. It was 9 acres of green roof.
Ugh.
That just makes you want to come into the office. Like, that's super cool to be part of.
Yeah, it really makes you think about office as kind of the user experience of it all. I do miss that office. I think Frank Gehry did design the space, and I'll always fondly remember this outdoor multi-level terrace we had called The Bowl, where we hosted our first Earth Week foodie fair with sustainable product vendors from the Bay Area. And that was 2019. So little did I know we'd never do another Earth Week 100% in person again. But I was so glad we were able to celebrate the nature forward elements of that beautiful space.
I mean, it's a thing. Like, I like working from home, but I did love going into a nice workplace that's comfortable to work in. And of course, the restaurants were always helpful to bring you as a pull into. And I think something like sunlight, nice views, having a space that you feel comfortable in really makes it so that you want to go to work. I mean, I think there's a study that shows that hospital patients who have sunlight are able to have like faster recovery time than those without that single thing. And as someone who had 2 C-sections, I can tell you the one where I was in the sunny room was much nicer than the one where I was like in this basement recovery room with no light. So I can speak from earned experience that sunlight is helpful.
Definitely. It's really important. And Jen, I feel like we could talk about this for another 2 hours, but I think that we're trying to keep these podcasts not at a 2-hour length so people keep listening. So, maybe we'll do a follow-up episode about built environment more because there's a lot more I know that we could talk about with biophilic design and biomimicry and just so many different ways that we are learning from the natural world.
Especially when you're making up words like this. So,
I'm not making up words. These are real words. Biophilic design, natural forms and patterns, how we're bringing nature into the space to reduce anxiety. Biomimicry is learning from nature and bringing that into the design of spaces. So maybe that's a teaser. We'll have to just talk about nature and built environment in a future episode.
Organize like field trips to all these places. We'll just bust in. We won't tell them we're coming. We'll all just bust in.
They love that. They love when you don't register guests.
Exactly. Well, this has been a wonderful tour. You have built us up. You have taught us so much about the built environment. So I would love that the next time we come around to this topic, we hear from our listeners about their built environments and how they're working towards creating healthy workplaces.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for going on a journey with me about buildings and environment. And I am excited because I think our next episode is going to be about the hottest topic in ESG reporting, Scope 3.
We are going to solve it. We're going to do it in a half an hour. That's all you need to know. So
that's all you need to know. Scope 3 in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So let us know if you have any questions about that topic. We'd love to hear from you and also about the built environment. And as always, keep engaging.
Thank you for joining us on Engaging ESG. Have a question for us to consider or a strategy you'd like us to cover? Email us today at engagingesg@gmail.com.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Engaging ESG today. It helps us grow, and even better, be sure to share the podcast with your favorite sustainability, diversity, or social impact colleague. And until next time, keep engaging.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.